The moon hung like a glowing lantern in the heavens, casting a soft silver light upon a peaceful, serene landscape. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and lavender, and the distant hum of cicadas created a gentle melody that seemed to echo through the soul. A faint breeze stirred the leaves of the olive trees, their silvery branches swaying in harmony with the stillness of the night. You found yourself standing in the middle of a garden, no ordinary garden, but a place that seemed to exist beyond time, a place where only the most tender thoughts could flourish. The ground beneath your feet was soft, warm, and slightly damp from the evening's dew. The stones of the garden path were smooth, worn down by countless footsteps. As you looked around, the beauty of the place seemed to stretch on forever, but there was something that felt deeply familiar about it. You could not quite place it. The air felt heavy, yet weightless. A paradox, like the very thoughts that floated in your mind. You had been here before, or so it seemed. Your gaze shifted upward to the temple that rose in the distance, a white structure, its pillars glowing faintly in the moonlight. It stood as though it had always been there, timeless and unshaken. From its steps emerged a figure, walking slowly toward you. At first you could not see his face, only the silhouette of a man cloaked in a simple robe. He moved with an ease that suggested both age and wisdom, but there was no rush in his movements, only a quiet grace, as though time itself had slowed to accommodate his steps. As he drew closer, you recognized him. It was Socrates, the great philosopher, the seeker of truth, standing before you as if conjured from the very fabric of your dreams. His face was etched with the wisdom of ages, his eyes sparkling with an almost playful curiosity. His beard, long and wispy, framed his face like the leaves of a tree framing the moon. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips, and his eyes twinkled with a gentle knowing. "You have come," he said, his voice low and soft, as though the very sound of it could soothe a troubled mind. You nodded, unsure of how to respond, feeling the weight of his gaze upon you. "Tell me," Socrates continued, his tone inviting, "why do you think you have found yourself here? In this place, at this time, under the watchful eye of the moon?" His words hung in the air, not as a question, to be answered immediately, but as a prompt to examine the deeper currents of your being. The quiet beauty of the garden seemed to envelop you, and you felt a sudden, overwhelming desire to speak, to share your thoughts, your questions, your fears. "I don't know," you whispered, your voice carrying the uncertainty of someone waking from a dream, unsure if they were still asleep. "I don't know how I got here, but I feel that I've been searching for something, for answers, perhaps." Socrates smiled again, and his gaze softened as if he understood. "You have always been searching," he said, "even in waking life, even when you thought you were not. The search for truth, for understanding, is not something you begin, it is something you remember. It is the calling of the soul, the quiet voice that stirs you when you are still." His words were like a gentle breeze, brushing through your thoughts, stirring something deep inside. For the first time in a long while, you felt as though you were in the presence of someone who truly understood. His wisdom was not forceful, but like the moonlight, it was calm and steady, illuminating the path you were meant to walk. "Let us sit," Socrates suggested, gesturing toward a stone bench nearby. You followed him, taking a seat next to him beneath the ancient olive tree that stood nearby. The air was cool here, and you felt at ease, as if the world itself had softened around you. He turned to face you, his eyes filled with quiet expectation. "Tell me, traveler," he asked, his voice calm and inviting. "What is it that troubles you? What is it that you seek to understand?" The words Socrates spoke lingered in your mind, like a pebble dropped into a still pond. The ripples of his inquiry touched something deep within you, a yearning to understand, to see beyond the surface of things. You had come to him in search of answers, but now, as you sat beneath the branches of the olive tree, you realized that perhaps the questions themselves were just as important as the answers. "What troubles me," you began, your voice hesitating, "is that I feel lost. There are so many things in life, so many paths, so many choices, and I don't know which one is the right one. I don't know what my purpose is. I feel as though I'm searching for something, but I can't seem to grasp it." Socrates listened intently, his eyes never leaving your face. His gaze was soft, yet penetrating, as though he could see directly into the core of your being. He nodded slowly, as if he had expected this answer. "Ah, the search for purpose," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It is a question that has puzzled many, and yet few truly understand its nature. You see, the question of purpose is not one that can be answered by another. It is a question you must answer for yourself, and it is not found in grand achievements or external accolades. No, purpose is found in the quiet moments, in the stillness of the soul." He leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on a deeper, more contemplative tone. "Consider the olive tree that stands before us. It is not concerned with the purpose of the wind or the path of the sun. It simply grows. It simply is. Its purpose is not a thing to be discovered in the future, but something that is expressed in the very act of being. It is enough for the tree to grow in its own time, in its own place, and to provide shade, fruit, and beauty to the world around it." You looked at the tree, its branches stretching toward the sky, its leaves dancing in the moonlight. For a moment, you could almost feel its quiet wisdom, its acceptance of its place in the world. Socrates smiled at your understanding. "Your purpose," he said softly, "is not something you must chase. It is something you must become. Like the tree, you must grow in your own time, in your own way, and trust that the fruits of your life will come in their own season." A silence passed between you, and the gentle rustling of the leaves filled the space. The stars above seemed to shine brighter in the quiet, as though they too were listening to the conversation. In that moment, you realized something profound. The search for purpose was not an external journey, but an internal one. You had been looking outside yourself for answers, when all along the answers had been within you, waiting to be discovered in the quiet spaces between thoughts. The night stretched on in a gentle silence, broken only by the soft sounds of the garden, the whisper of the wind, the chirping of crickets, the distant call of an owl. In the moonlight, the garden seemed to shimmer, like a dream that had not yet fully taken form. The tranquility of the moment made it easy to forget the world outside. This was a space for quiet reflection, a place where time itself seemed to slow, allowing the mind to settle and the heart to listen. Socrates remained beside you, his posture relaxed, his expression serene. His eyes, though aged with wisdom, still carried the spark of a young philosopher, eager to explore the mysteries of the human experience. His presence was calm, inviting, as though he had all the time in the world to listen, to guide, to share. "Do you know yourself?" Socrates asked suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a soft breeze. The question was simple, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. You blinked, startled by the question. It was not one you had considered before, at least not in this way. What did it mean to know oneself? Had you truly understood the depths of your own being, or had you only ever scratched the surface? "I think I do," you replied, but the uncertainty in your voice made you pause. "At least, I've tried to, but there are so many parts of me that seem unknown. So many thoughts, desires, fears that I don't understand. How can I truly know myself?" When there is so much within me that feels unfamiliar. Socrates nodded thoughtfully, his gaze shifting toward the stars above, as though seeking answers from the heavens themselves. To know oneself, he began, his voice soft but filled with a deep, resonant truth, is not a matter of simply recognizing one's external traits, one's appearance, one's occupation, one's role in society. It is not about the labels that others place upon you, nor even the labels you place upon yourself. To know yourself is to understand the inner workings of your mind, your heart, your soul. It is to see the shadows within you, the fears that you hide from yourself, as well as the light that you share with others. He paused, turning to face you, his eyes steady and unwavering. You cannot know yourself by looking outward, by comparing yourself to others. You must turn inward. You must become aware of the thoughts and emotions that pass through your mind like clouds in the sky. You must recognize that you are not your thoughts, not your feelings, but the observer of those things, the one who watches them come and go. You found yourself reflecting on his words. Could it really be that simple? Could you truly find yourself by stepping back from your thoughts, by detaching from the constant churn of your mind? Is that not a difficult task? You asked, your voice tinged with curiosity. To observe one's thoughts without becoming entangled in them. It seems impossible at times. Socrates smiled gently, as though he had expected this question. It is difficult, yes, but not impossible. The key lies in practice, in becoming aware of the present moment. When you are aware of your thoughts without identifying with them, you begin to free yourself from the endless cycle of desires and fears that govern your life. You begin to realize that you are not defined by the fleeting emotions or thoughts that pass through you. You are something deeper, something eternal. The words echoed in your mind. They stirred something within you, a longing to understand this deeper aspect of yourself, to find the stillness that Socrates spoke of. He continued, his voice becoming even softer, as though he were sharing a secret only the stars could hear. The self is not a static thing. It is a fluid river, constantly changing, constantly evolving. The river of your being flows through time, and though its waters may seem turbulent at times, they are always in motion, always moving toward a deeper understanding. The key is to remain with the flow, to not become attached to the rocks and obstacles that momentarily appear in your path. You sat quietly, taking in his words. There was something profoundly peaceful in the way he spoke, a deep assurance that came from someone who had spent a lifetime contemplating the nature of existence. And yet, his wisdom was not imposing. It did not demand that you follow any particular path, but instead invited you to explore, to seek answers for yourself. As you sat in silence, contemplating the nature of the self, the stars above seemed to twinkle in agreement, as though they too were part of the conversation. The night was alive with possibility, with the quiet promise of discovery. Finally, Socrates spoke again, his voice like the softest whisper. The most important question you can ask yourself then is not what others think of you, or even what you think of yourself, but what you choose to become in each moment. Who do you choose to be in the face of every thought, every feeling, every experience? The question hung in the air, a challenge and an invitation all at once. It was a question that seemed simple, but the depth of it resonated within you, stirring something deep and unspoken. You felt a shift within, a subtle change. Perhaps, just perhaps, the search for the self was not a search at all. Perhaps it was simply an unfolding, a quiet realization that, like the olive tree, you had always been becoming who you were meant to be. The night deepened, the air growing cooler as the stars above shifted ever so slightly in the vast, unchanging sky. The garden had grown quieter, the sounds of the outside world muffled by the heavy peace that seemed to settle over everything. The only movement came from the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze, as though the very earth was breathing. Socrates sat beside you, his expression calm and knowing. It was as though he had seen all the questions you could ask and all the answers you would find, and yet he waited patiently for you to arrive at them on your own. His presence was both grounding and liberating, a reminder that true wisdom does not force answers upon you, but gently guides you toward your own discoveries. "Tell me," Socrates said, his voice breaking the silence once more. "Do you believe you have control over your life?" You thought for a moment, reflecting on the question. In many ways, you had always believed in the importance of control. You had worked hard to shape your life, to steer it in the direction you wanted. But now, in this moment, surrounded by the stillness of the garden, you wondered whether control was truly as it seemed. "I suppose I've always thought that control was important," you said slowly. "That if I could manage my thoughts, my actions, my environment, I could create the life I wanted. But now, I'm not so sure. It feels like there's so much I can't control. So many things are beyond my reach." Socrates nodded, his eyes gleaming with understanding. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "The illusion of control. It is something that has led many astray. You see, control is often mistaken for power, but they are not the same. Power is the ability to influence, to shape the world around you. Control, however, is the desire to manipulate things to fit your will. But the world is not here to serve your desires. It exists as it is, with its own rhythm, its own flow." He gestured to the garden around you, the olive trees, the stars, the quiet night. The tree does not control the wind that moves through its branches. It does not command the sun to rise or the rain to fall. Yet it thrives. It grows in the direction that life offers it, bending with the winds and reaching for the light. Control, then, is an illusion, a false belief that we can bend the world to our will. His words seemed to resonate deeply, like a chord struck within you. You had always strived to control the circumstances of your life, to force things into alignment. But perhaps this was the root of your discontent, the constant struggle against forces beyond your control. "You see," Socrates continued, "true freedom comes not from controlling the world, but from accepting it as it is. It is in surrendering to the flow of life, in trusting that what comes to you is exactly what you need, even if it is not what you expect or desire." For a long moment, you were silent, contemplating the vastness of his words. The idea that surrender could lead to freedom was a concept that felt both foreign and deeply familiar, like an ancient truth that had been buried beneath layers of doubt and resistance. The cool night air seemed to deepen, and the stars above shone brighter, as though the universe itself was affirming the truth of Socrates' words. Perhaps in letting go of the need to control, you could find a deeper peace, a peace that came not from manipulating the world around you, but from embracing it as it was. The garden was quiet now, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The moon hung high, casting its silver glow upon the olive tree, the stone path, and the surrounding flowers, each petal shimmering with a softness that could only be described as magical. The air felt thick with stillness, and for the first time you noticed how each small element of the garden, the faint rustling of leaves, the delicate scent of jasmine, the subtle movements of the shadows, seemed to be in perfect harmony, as though the entire universe was speaking to you in a quiet, unspoken language. Socrates, sitting beside you on the stone bench, seemed to embody this stillness. His presence was as calming as the night itself, and his eyes, though filled with wisdom, spoke of a deep contentment, a satisfaction that came from understanding the simplest truths of life. "You seem deep in thought," he remarked gently, his voice breaking the silence. "What is it that occupies your mind now?" You sat for a moment reflecting. There was a calmness in the air, a soft, almost hypnotic rhythm to the evening. And yet, Socrates' question stirred something within you. It was as though the conversation was taking you to places you had never dared to visit before, places that felt simultaneously distant and intimately familiar. "I've been thinking," you began slowly, "about the way I live my life. I feel as though I've been chasing something for so long, trying to create something, to achieve something, but I'm not sure I've ever truly understood what it means to live, what it means to live well." Socrates turned to face you fully, his eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. It was as though he had anticipated this question, as though he had been waiting for you to ask it. "Ah," he said softly, "the art of living. It is a question that has preoccupied many a mind, but the answer is not found in the external world. It is not found in the things you possess, the titles you hold, or the achievements you rack up. No, the art of living is not about doing, it is about being." He leaned back slightly, his gaze turning to the stars above. To live well is not to strive endlessly, to push yourself to the limit in search of something outside yourself. To live well is to be present in each moment, to fully embrace the life that is unfolding before you. It is to see the beauty in the simplest things, in the way the light filters through the leaves of a tree, in the sound of a bird's song at dawn, in the warmth of the earth beneath your feet. Socrates turned back to you, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "You must learn to live in harmony with the rhythm of life, not against it. Just as the flower does not struggle to bloom, you must not struggle to be yourself. The art of living is to flow with the natural course of things, to surrender to the moment, to cultivate gratitude for what is, rather than longing for what is not." You felt a soft wave of recognition wash over you. The notion that life was an art, something to be appreciated in its own right, something to be felt and experienced fully, was a concept you had never truly allowed yourself to understand. You had always been focused on the doing, on the striving and the achieving. But perhaps, as Socrates suggested, the key was not in the pursuit of more, but in the deep appreciation of the present. "It sounds so simple," you said quietly, almost to yourself. "But it feels like such a difficult thing to do." Socrates smiled, his eyes gentle. "Indeed, it is simple, yet not always easy. We live in a world that encourages constant striving, constant doing. But true peace, true happiness, comes not from what you accumulate, but from what you release. It comes from letting go of the need to control, of the need to constantly seek validation from the outside world. The art of living, then, is the art of being. Not becoming, but simply being." For a moment you sat in silence, letting his words settle within you like morning dew on a flower petal. You began to sense a shift, a quiet realization that perhaps all along you had been looking in the wrong place for fulfillment. Perhaps it was not about achieving more, but about being more fully present in the life you already had. The stars above seemed to shine brighter in the stillness, as though they, too, were nodding in agreement, acknowledging the truth of Socrates' words. It was as if the entire universe, in its vastness, was echoing the simplicity of his message. To live well was to live in harmony with the present moment, to accept the ebb and flow of life without resistance. Socrates broke the silence, his voice soft but firm. "Remember this, the art of living is not about seeking perfection, but about embracing the imperfections. It is about seeing the beauty in the cracks, the flaws, the moments of vulnerability that make you human. The flower blooms not in spite of its imperfections, but because of them, and so too must you. You closed your eyes for a moment, taking in the depth of his words. The weight of your search for purpose, for meaning, for success, all of it seemed to lighten in the face of this simple truth. Perhaps the greatest achievement of all was simply to live fully, to experience each moment with openness and gratitude. The night seemed to stretch on, but time no longer felt like a thing to be measured. The conversations, the quiet reflections, had wrapped themselves around you like a warm blanket, and you no longer felt the need to race toward an end. The questions that had once felt so urgent about your life, your purpose, your future, seemed to float away, carried by the wind, leaving only the present moment. Socrates sat beside you, his posture relaxed, his face serene. It was as if he had all the time in the world, and yet it felt as though he had already shared everything that needed to be shared. And still, you felt there was more to learn, more to explore, more to understand about this life, this world, and yourself. After a long pause, you spoke again, your voice soft but sincere. You've spoken of living well, of finding purpose, of embracing the present moment. But what about happiness? How do we find happiness in a world that is so often filled with pain and suffering? Socrates turned to you, his expression thoughtful. "Ah, happiness," he mused, as if considering the nature of the question for the first time. What is happiness after all? Is it the fleeting joy of a moment, the satisfaction of a desire fulfilled? Or is it something deeper, something more enduring? He leaned forward, his eyes searching yours. Happiness, true happiness, is not a state of being that can be found outside of yourself. It is not something that can be achieved, nor something that can be given. It is not found in wealth or fame or the approval of others. No, happiness is a state of mind, a way of being that comes from within. Socrates paused, allowing his words to sink in. Happiness is the result of living a virtuous life. It is the fruit of living in alignment with your true nature, of acting in harmony with your inner self. It is not found in the pursuit of pleasure, but in the cultivation of wisdom, courage, and kindness. You felt the weight of his words, the depth of their meaning. Happiness, it seemed, was not something to be chased. It was something to be cultivated from within, through the way you lived, the choices you made, and the love you gave. The night had deepened further, and yet the world around you seemed untouched by time. The stars above continued their quiet dance across the sky, as if they had always been there, waiting for you to notice them, to listen to their subtle song. The olive tree stood steady, its branches reaching ever upward, and the gentle breeze whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the stories of ages long past. Socrates sat beside you, his presence still as calm and reassuring as ever. His eyes, though filled with infinite wisdom, seemed to hold a sadness now, as though he too was aware that all journeys must eventually come to an end. For the first time in your conversation, a sense of stillness seemed to settle between you, not from a lack of words, but from a deep recognition that everything you needed to know had already been shared. You had been given the gift of understanding, the gentle reminder that the search for truth, purpose, and happiness was not about reaching some distant destination, but about being fully present in the journey itself. The moon, bright and steady, cast its soft glow over the garden, and Socrates turned toward you, his gaze full of quiet affection. "Traveler," he said softly, his voice almost a whisper, "do you feel it now? The stillness, the peace that comes from embracing the present moment, from surrendering to the flow of life." You nodded, a sense of warmth flooding your chest as you realized the truth of his words. You had arrived at something deeper, something more profound. than any intellectual understanding could offer. You had arrived at the place where words faded away and only the quiet presence of being remained. Your journey here, Socrates continued, his voice tender, was not about seeking answers. It was about remembering what you already know, what you have always known. Life is a process of unfolding, of becoming who you are meant to be. It is not a destination to be reached, but a path to be walked. You sat for a long moment, letting his words wash over you, filling the empty spaces within. It was as though you had been carrying a heavy burden, and now, at last, you could lay it down. The search for meaning, for truth, for happiness, these were not external things to be found, but internal experiences to be lived. Socrates rose from the bench slowly, his movements as graceful as the gentle sway of the olive tree's branches. He turned toward you, his eyes gleaming with something deeper, something ancient, something eternal. "Remember this," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "The journey never ends. It is not a single moment that defines your life, but the way you meet each moment as it comes. Embrace the uncertainty, the impermanence, the mystery, and above all, remember that you are always becoming." With that, he took a step back, and for a moment, you felt a sense of loss, like the end of a beautiful dream, one that you were not ready to leave behind. But as quickly as the thought appeared, it faded into the stillness of the night. You realized that Socrates had already given you everything you needed, the gift of living with presence, of seeing each moment with clarity and acceptance. As you looked around at the peaceful garden one last time, you felt a deep sense of gratitude. The moonlit temple, the olive trees, the soft rustle of leaves, all of it was part of you now, a part of your own unfolding. Socrates began to walk toward the temple, his figure growing smaller with each step. His presence still felt even as his form disappeared into the night. You could not tell whether he was walking toward a distant destination or simply returning to the essence of all things. Either way, you knew that his wisdom would remain with you, carried in the quiet corners of your mind and heart. The garden, too, began to fade as you slowly became aware of the world outside this dreamlike space. The stars twinkled one last time, like a soft, silent reminder that the universe was vast and infinite, and you, too, were a part of it. As the moonlight slowly dimmed, you felt a sense of peace settle into your being, a quiet knowing that everything was as it should be. The search was not over, but perhaps it was never meant to end. The path ahead was not something to conquer, but something to walk with grace and mindfulness, embracing the uncertainty, the beauty, and the mystery along the way. And so, with a deep breath, you allowed yourself to awaken back into the world, but changed. The garden, the temple, and the quiet presence of Socrates remained with you, not as a distant memory, but as an ever-present part of the journey ahead. The end of one story, perhaps, but the beginning of another.